You're listening to Real Talk Radio live on Facebook and YouTube. We are streaming thanks to my very special sponsors, Remax Palm Mobile Tower, and also I've got Lions Title and Trust. Our great friends over there, they do a great job on the closings. So if you have any questions about any upcoming properties that you're closing on or thinking about selling, contact them, educate yourself on the proper processes. And also we have the Hardin Insurance Group, Allstate on Toledo Blade. The Hardin Insurance Group offers all kinds of different insurance, and they are a great organization to work with. Go talk with them. And I appreciate them being part of it. Zoe's Pizza, as always, a huge contributor and a longtime supporter. And thanks to anyone else along the way. I've got a very special guest in the house for pre-recording. So leave your comments behind, and we will definitely follow back around with any comments that you may have. But Mr. Jerome Fletcher, our city manager of Northport, how are you doing, sir?
I am doing well, sir. How are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I just got back from seeing the granddaughters and some friends down in St. James City. We had YOLO Fest down there this weekend, and it's been quite the month of ups and down emotions. So my granddaughters, Ellie and Evie T, and Parker and Liz down in St. James City, we had a great time with them.
Now, was there snow where you were?
So it was it was 17 degrees. Then it kind of hit a 70-degree day, and then it popped back down into the 20s. So we had a lot of fluctuation. We got some yard work done though. We got all kinds of things done that you do in either Ohio or Indiana at those, critical 70-degree days. As May approaches, you've got to have your April month cleanup, and your March is that occasional good weather, bad weather thing. And so we took advantage of the great weather though. We went to the park, we did all kinds of stuff in the yard, and their yard is going to absolutely be gorgeous this spring as things start to kind of be thinned out and grow back. So it's going to be fun to watch and fun to see pictures.
I'm glad you were there. I'm glad you got a chance to spend some well-deserved time with your family and, take a little bit of break. I don't miss that schizophrenic weather that is up there in the north or to the west. But I'm going to tell you, when the grandbabies come, I get it. I want to be where they are as much as possible. So I will be doing the exact same thing, snow or not. So hats off to you, sir.
Well, and I will tell everybody, I took my winter shorts and I had a pair of long pants, and I refused to play winter. I did not put them on.
There's no such thing as winter shorts. They don't. That is not a thing.
I was in shorts and a t-shirt the whole time.
Okay, you were just cold, but okay, all right.
I just played outside. I did whatever I had to do, and I sucked it up. I even did some car work. So I have this little thermal dial, and I just turn up the heat. So just active. But that anybody who knows me up north knows I'm going to be in my shorts.
Yes. Oh wow. Okay. Not going to happen with me, but good luck.
So what's happening in our great city?
Oh, well, nothing really other than, the budget, the voting referendum, Doge responding, and, just usual things that happen in the city of Northport. But, we're in that sort of that part of our year where we're trying to figure out the budget. That still is always going to be the main thing this time of year. But when you add on to it, the promotion of the special election is something that is top of mind. We had our last town hall on April the 2nd, and we were over at the Station 86 public safety building. Had a good turnout. That was our second iteration of the town hall. It's such a great format for our citizens to be able to have a meeting with all 5 commissioners, and they're able to have a back and forth regarding some questions. It's just very unique. We don't do it very often, and it's not needed very often. But when you have something like the referendum and all the questions that we're asking the citizens to get educated on and then make their proper decision, it's just valuable. So you don't have to sort of shut them down in a regular commission meeting because 3 minutes at a public comment is not sort of the answer for this type of life-changing decision we're asking the citizens to make.
So I got a question for you, because and I know we got the Doge thing coming up, and I want to kind of delve into that a little bit. But I hear a lot of citizens say it doesn't matter what the representation says, don't believe them. I find that to be a little alarming, because who are you supposed to get your source of information from if it's not from staff or a community leader, commissioner, or yourself? Not that I want to stir things up, because I don't want to stir it up, but kind of direct citizens through your vision on why they should, one, be engaged with you, but they can also be critical with you.
Yes. So the way I look at it, I would almost flip that around and say, instead of engaging with me, be careful who you are engaging with. There's certain people who have already predetermined what they're going to do, irregardless of any information that comes across their way. And those people, you're never going to change their mind from. What you want are people who want and seek, are information seekers, and say, well, let me figure out how I can get the correct information. And if the city is giving me information, prove it. Prove what you're saying to me. Prove to me what you're saying. Prove to me that you need a police headquarters, and for us to vote on it in a positive way that allows you to pay for it in the cheapest way possible. The question, the biggest question, 2 biggest questions on the referendum. One is the police headquarters. We're asking you, can we purchase and build this needed asset for our community in the cheapest way possible? Not if you think we need it, or, not if you think that's the right price for it. We're asking you, do you think that we can buy it using general obligations bonds, which is going to give us the cheapest interest rate, which we can prove that to be a fact, and we can show that it is going to be the least costly way for this huge asset. So that's something that we can prove. We can prove the need, and we can prove the cost, because those have already been explored and evaluated. So, the other one is about the borrowing authority. We can prove that we're the only city in the state that can't borrow money in our time of need. And we can prove to you that if a second hurricane hits us, we're not going to be able to afford it. We can prove to you that the city attorney and the city clerk don't need to live in our city, because they're not forward-facing public officials. They are available for our citizens when they need them, whether that's 9 to 5 in person, whether it's after hours in a phone call. They don't stop performing their duties because they are not residents of this city. And and being able to prove that, we can do that. And some would say, well, they should live here because we pay taxpayer dollars for them, and they should live here. You're still going to pay taxpayers dollars. We all are, for their services. And we have 1,000 employees with the city. I believe the number is over half of them do not live in the city. This city, our city. Do you think that they provide less services because they don't live in our city? No, absolutely not. They come to work every day, and they work their butts off, and we're proud of the effort that they give. So, you have those questions that I think are going to need to be answered. And then you have the other 2 items that we're asking for, which are the projects, whether it's the transfer station or the pumping station. We need those facilities in order to make sure that we keep moving the city forward. So, and we can prove that as well. So, either way, just be careful where you get your information from. And I want people to know that we're here as resources to help them through their questions they may have.
Well, and I point that out because if our government isn't the resource for what they're doing, all right, if we cancel that, who is then? Because if we take the government resource out of what you guys are doing,
right,
because I also read that there's a group of people that want to eliminate communications and the communications department at City Hall.
Really?
And,
Like our communication department?
yeah.
Really?
Which is ironic because it would be the same. It would be the same as saying, all right, we don't believe what you're saying, but you're not now allowed to say anything either.
Right.
You know, I know they're out there and there's chatter.
Yes.
But that's more than likely not going to happen. We've got a great communications team right now that really is amping up everything they can to get the information to the citizens.
We have a phenomenal communications team, and not only are they still, getting better every single day, but under Jason Bartalone, who is our communication director, and Madison Ingalls, who is our deputy, they are constantly trying to improve on how and what we do, and has an amazing team that does a great level of outreach and making sure that people get the proper information they need. Anyone who says we don't need a communications, division or department is just, misguided as to how we perform the services we do. And you really need to stop listening to those people. I'm going to just flat out say it, stop listening to people who talk crazy like that. You don't have time.
That was my next question.
We don't have time for this. We have so much work to do and so many, things to do for the right people who want to receive it in the right way. We don't have time for people who have these crazy ideas and conversations. Just go talk amongst yourselves, but reality will be waiting when you get done, and we got work to do over here.
So let's go into the Doge side of things, because it's ironic how all these things kind of they get bundled in with communications in and out, and different things like that. So explain the Doge request, and then how we handled that, and what your thoughts are on the whole thing.
Yeah. So, we got our first Doge letter from the executive office of the governor, and his team asked us 4 or 5 questions that were related back to financial distress in the city. And, thankfully, we haven't had any of that distress. And today is Tuesday, April 8th, and we had a commission meeting just now this morning. And part of Commissioner Petro's parting comments was regarding sort of how we responded back to the letter. And for those who don't know, the letter that we received, we responded back that we had not experienced any of the conditions of financial distress that were mentioned, and we stand ready if they have any more questions for us. And so what people externally have said is that we don't support Doge and we don't want them to come in here. And never, ever have we said that. And what we said was, we stand ready if you need more information from us. This is not the Masters. We're not going to go out and walk them an invitation to their mailbox and say, please come in here and look at us. But I can guarantee you that when they do come look at us, we are going to stand head and shoulders above anyone else. We have low debt because we cannot borrow. We are one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and that means we are bringing in taxes for the state. The financial distress that we were questioned on, we have none of that. And so part of what Commissioner Petrov had heard, out external to the city, was that we as a city could have done more to sort of explain some of our financial situations, not being able to borrow money, which is on our referendum needing to borrow, to the Doge department that reached out to us. And in my opinion, which is what I said to him in our meeting, at the end of our meeting, I encourage people to go back and listen to it, was that there will be a time and a place for us to talk to the governor about our needs. When they reach out to us for the first time and say, hey, we're looking for situations of financial distress, that wasn't the time to sort of, hey, and by the way, can you help us by giving us money or recognizing something else? As we go through the process with the governor and his Doge team, and they continue to engage us, we will be able to better paint a picture of our situation. And then I'm pretty sure they will have a better context and view of what we go through and what we need from them. But, timing is everything. But, we were grateful that Commissioner Petro brought it up, and he was, curious enough to say, hey, should we write them a letter to sort of outline some of that? But I promised them we will do that in the future. But the Doge process, we are thoroughly engaged in. We are doing our budget as we normally would. We have nothing to hide, and we hope that they keep, enter interacting with us so that we can make sure that we answer all their questions, and the citizens of Northport know that they should be proud of their financial team, and we don't run or have nothing to hide from anyone.
Awesome. So you kind of highlighted the money side of things and mentioned budget. So kind of let's transition into budget now.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that?
Oh,
gonna
yes.
go?
So the budget is going well, because I would say it's going well, even though we don't have the money to pay for everything that we want to do. But to me, the budget is going well. Our team is, compiling their budgets. They're putting it all in. They're asking for their needs, which is what we always encourage them to do. Don't hold anything back. And once they submit it, then we sort of go through it and scrub it for what we can keep and what we can't keep. And the commission is well aware of what we leave on the cutting room floor of our budget, and then we sort of balance it in a way that we need to without a millage increase, which they have given direction for, that we will not raise the millage. And then we're going to do an exercise that they also asked for, which was what does lowering the millage rate looks like. That's approximately $3 million to lower the millage in a way that they want done. Unfortunately, when you lower the millage, you're talking about the general fund, and 61% of our general fund is made up by public safety. So if you're looking at the round numbers, you're talking about, $1.7 million that we would take from public safety. That's a lot to ask for our fire and police, who we're already going to not give them everything they asked for in their original budget. You're starting to cut to the bone of your services when you start talking about cutting for a millage decrease. That's going to be very hard to do. And when you start sacrificing the level of your services, that's when problems come in. So we don't want that, but we're going to do it because that's what we were told to do.
Yeah. We've had this conversation in the past too.
Yeah.
We've got city taxes, the millage rate, and then we've got county taxes, which is, I think even Ron DeSantis is working on some of those numbers. And you and I have had this conversation on and off the camera for several years now.
Right.
Man, if we could maintain and not like throw shadow on the cutting, but if we could just maintain, you and I have also said, if we just did incremental increases, it would be more fit for budget numbers for people. Instead of a big number, you're incrementally adjusting some things, and you're getting a little bit more in, yes, collecting a little bit more, but you're microchipping versus the massive number.
Right.
I just gave you a third level of what you're looking at, because you're looking at can we cut? You're also and you guys are still going at that because that's how you were directed.
Correct.
And can we maintain? And I just threw a third one at you, which is what could we do if we micro increased?
Yes. So, the micro increasing, starting right from there, I wish we would have embraced that since I've been here for the 3 years and I've been saying that. It just doesn't look like it's going to happen. And the exploration of the decrease, I think, is sort of cutting to the bone. So now you're at what does a stable millage rate look like? If you look at it from those two perspectives from my standpoint. So the increase in our property tax revenue based on home values, hopefully increasing, a little bit. Last year I think it was 17%, which had dropped down from 20% from the year before that. I think everyone looks and knows that the real estate market is nowhere near it was 2-3 years ago when it was just some extraordinary numbers. So now you're going to get back to sort of a real number, which may be around 10 or 11%. We're going to take that, and then that's going to be used to help for some of just the natural increases in our expenses from year to year. And then you'll have to shave off and do some other things to get it to balance, which is fine and okay. But, from the standpoint and the overall look of what we're doing for our budget, we're going to have to just make sure that we don't cut too deep. We need to make sure that, if their budget submittals from our departments are at the top of the list, so to speak, and then there's a floor that you don't want to go below, because then you start sacrificing services. there's a gap in there that we can sort of be able to make sure that we balance ourselves while still don't jeopardizing our quality of services here on the bottom. And that's how we have to think, and that's how we have to work, because we do not want our citizens to start looking at services that they're accustomed to and say, well, why is this city, not giving us what they provided to get us here? Because if we do that, then the people that we still need to come here to maximize our ULDC changes that's going to give us revenue in the upcoming years will be jeopardized. Then we all sort of missed the mark on it. So there's a strategy here and a plan that we have to work within, and some boundaries that we have to work within to make sure we do the right thing for everyone.
So you just pointed something out, and I'm gonna utilize that for a second on the borrow side of things. We pay out a lot of money for Hurricane Ian cleanup, and that money stayed out of pocket for the city for years. I think we got that back 3 years later. With this borrowing power, that gives us the capability of managing our funds differently when it comes to an emergency like that. And we have not had multiple hurricanes. We came close to that last year, where we would have had a couple. If we would have had those two back to back, that what you guys are asking for on the borrow side of things now puts us in the capability of maintaining the proper services to the community that we expect. And we already set the standard with how we cleaned up after Ian. And we've talked about that in depth, not just with you, but other staff, public works, and how that was kind of redefined the whole process. There has to be a tour given to other cities on how we did that. But the funds, we use our own funding. Can you talk about utilizing our own funding for multiple hurricanes versus being able to borrow and kind of work well within what we have?
Sure. So we were able to borrow and use money from our road and drainage, district fund for, the majority of what we're talking about is the debris removal that occurred. It was upwards over, $50-60 million. So having that, and then allowing sort of that fund, which we went into the negative on our reserves of what we had, not what the fund itself existed from, but we sort of went under the number that we actually found appropriate. We didn't go negative in the fund. So when someone says, well, the governor and Doge, ask you financial distress questions, then you were in financial distress, you didn't report it. We were in what we deemed as financial distress, not the fund that anyone outside of us would have deemed. That's the point of having your reserves and having yourselves being covered. So now we had a 3-year obligation to pay that money back to get it to where it was. And we're, on track, and we're doing fine with that. But we were below our own standard, and now we've caught up to our standard. And now if we have 2 more storms back to back this year, we would not have the financial capability to take that. We'd be not only below our standard, we'd be below governance standard, but then we'd be going to the governor and saying, hey, look, we have this situation. We don't have the ability to borrow because let's just say it didn't pass in May, and then we need help from the state. And I can tell you right now, you're seeing what I'm seeing with the Doge environment and from the state. They're not going to be inclined to say, hey, look, we understand what you're going through. Let's give us some money. They're going to say, why didn't you better prepare and protect yourself before we got here? And then we'll have to say that we did, but the citizens didn't pass it, and have to go from there. So that's not a situation any of us want to be in. We should take care of ourselves because we can, and we have the people in the right positions to make sure that we do it responsibly. And why would we not want to do that the right way?
How does that loan process work? How have you guys set that up so that, and really kind of layman terms, so that the citizens understand it?
So the thing that the citizens truly need to understand is once we get the ability to borrow, you borrow responsibly through a debt management policy. And I think people are forgetting about that. That debt management policy is what the commission can then determine to say, here are the thresholds, here are the benchmarks, here are where the lines are drawn as to how much you can borrow and why you should borrow. And if you don't like that debt management policy that is out there, you talk to the commissioners bring it up, and then that is a changeable, editable, sort of livable document that would be subject to the commission being able to make sure that they represent the citizens who elected them to put the right policies in place, and that debt management policy is critical for that to be successful.
What is your answer to a citizen who says they just want to do this so they can build the police station?
We have said before last year's vote in November, and we will say again, you cannot build a police headquarters or any large scale infrastructure project through the cheapest way possible, which is general obligation bonds. By state law, you have to go ask the citizens to use those kind of bonds, and they are the cheapest bonds for your government. So your government in any large scale project, whether it's a police headquarters, but let's say a city hall, let's say we wanted to build a new city hall that costs $100 million because we've already outgrown this one. The most responsible way to do that is general obligation bonds because it's the cheapest interest rate. So we need to come back to the citizens and say, look, we want to borrow $100 million for a new city hall. Yes, no. They say no, and we still need it, then we're going to go through another financial method, whether it's certificates of participation, whether it's a public-private partnership or a lease buyback, and it's going to cost more than a general obligation bond. If you are responsible stewards of the taxpayers' dollars, why would you not go through the cheapest way possible? But once you try to go through the cheapest way possible, if that's not allowed and the need still exists, you got to figure it out in a different way.
How does the future growth affect the loan borrowing power?
The future growth of the city, as long as we keep going in the right direction, it will mean two things. The first thing it will mean is, as we have sort of had a pay-as-you-go mentality over the existence of our city, we will have money there that we can accumulate that will allow us to pay for things that we don't have to borrow for. For instance, the two projects that we have, one is 14 million, one is 31 million. Wouldn't it have been great if we had 31 million where we just said, here you go, without sort of cannibalizing some other projects? That's the first thing. The second thing, when you do have to borrow, as you continue to grow and your money increases as it comes into your city, then you should, and I say should only because we don't know what some of the future is going to predict. If we have a recession, some of this goes out the window, but you should be able to pay that off faster and lower that amount of debt that you have outstanding. That would be great. To be able to pay for things without borrowing would be great, and to be able to pay things off faster when you borrow. But that is based on other people coming into this city. The people who are in this city right now should not bear the financial burden of everything that we need. It should be spread out so that we can pay for it for those who are here, and people who want to come here should share in that payment as well.
So we've got a whole lot to look at as a citizenry
Yes.
on this this current referendum that's out there. There's really critical things that we should be paying attention to, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. These are very important pieces of input that we're seeking the citizens to weigh in on, that hopefully everyone is paying attention to. We need to make sure that our snowbirds vote early. We need to make sure we hear their voice before they leave. The ones who are here, we want them to go out and vote, but we need them to pay attention. And, we've heard the criticism from some people say, well, you shouldn't have put this on a special election. You should have waited until 2026. Wait 2 more hurricane periods to see what happens, but, wait and put it on there. Wait 2 more years to see if crime increases in this city and we don't have the right facilities to support before you begin, not before you get the police headquarters, before you begin building it. Even if we get it voted on in May, it's still going to take, 2+ years for us to get the police headquarters. So we want you to wait 2 more years for that.
Right.
Because that makes sense. It's just people don't understand. Some people don't understand the opportunity cost and the time cost of money. everything gets more expensive when you wait for it. And whether it's tariffs that we didn't know or a recession that we can't see, we need to make sure that we do the right things and take care of ourselves, period.
Well, we're going through that with Toledo Blade.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, not Toledo Blade, but Price.
The Price Boulevard. Yes. Someone said, what did they tell me? They said the original price widening was like $15 million. And now here we're looking at a total of 80 million and, 50 some odd that we borrowed in order to pay it back. I mean, the numbers are just staggering. And these numbers do not show any sign of reducing in the near future.
And I will say, you have the Doja of the world out there, but these roads don't get paid for by grants a lot of times. You're trying to budget them in. Sometimes they do. We have got great grant writers. We've got great people at City Hall doing those. We've talked about those in the past, but
right.
the funding, it just isn't. It isn't always all provided by the federal government.
Oh no! Oh, absolutely not. So with our, you're always seeking, grants for infrastructure, and thankfully the governor has had a focus on infrastructure in the last few years, even though he's cut back and been more selective because he's trying to balance his own budget.
Right.
He's looking back, and I think he gave somewhere of $500 million either, back or early, and he's looking to be fiscally responsible as we all are, but we're doing our part now to make sure that this project, the police headquarters is funded by next year's cycle of funding at the state level. We have representatives at the state level that support the city of Northport that says, hey, look, we're trying to get you guys roughly $20 million for this project, but you guys got to get, it doesn't work that you add our money to your pot. You have to have the entire project funded, and then we fight to get funding that will reduce your payments and reduce your amount that you owe. So if we can get that $20 million from them next year, that would be phenomenal. But first things first, you got to get the funding identified through your own means, and that's what we're working on.
There you go. And it is nice to understand the process. I think there are a lot of citizens out here that throw their hands in the air. I will say this: my trip up to Indiana, there is one thing that cold weather brings, and that's road damage.
Oh yes,
because of the frost and the thaw. But when you drive the streets of Muncie, Indiana, and then you come back home, and you see a city that's on a repavement program. The front end of my truck is crying for front end alignment check right now because of the amount of potholes that we were on for 3 weeks.
Wow.
We don't have that. We actually have an app here that identifies it. If they did that up there, there would be so many pothole identified that it's called Repave the Road.
Right.
We do all these things to keep our streets good and sound and operable and going through all these processes and really listening to what Public Works says, listen to what you say, listen to what the commissioners say. When new roads are created, I'm going to use two examples here real quick, and I want you to explain the difference between the two roads, so that people understand how this can be convoluted. You've got funding for Price Boulevard, and you've got funding for River Road.
Yes.
Can you talk about how that all is different than the norm?
So Price Boulevard was funded through a loan that is being repaid through surtax because it was actually voted upon from the citizens in November of 2022. So using that as a funding source has been a great help to our city. When that funding source was renewed, it is going to bring over $315 million to the city over a 15-year window. And that is phenomenal that we're able to sort of take advantage of some of that. Now, River Road is a county project that is not actually being paid out through the city of Northport, which is great because even though it's one of our arteries and through our community, as well as that's North River Road that is currently being worked on, which didn't cost directly through our citizens or our city, even though we have a hand in paying it back. That is not our project, which is great because not only are they managing it, but they're also looking at now how do they widen South River Road, and that is in the works as well. So you talk about the high school that's being built down there. You talk about the sports park that's going to be on the other side of the high school that we're going to use to activate some sports tourism in this city. And then you have more revenue sources that are just generating dollars to come in here so that hopefully we can do things like maintain our 104-mile roadway system without asking for any more money than we absolutely have to. So it all goes together with making sure that we take our funds and leverage them and use them as well as we can so that the city can stay on the right side of repair, replacement, and advancing our transportation arteries in the city.
And it's nice for citizens to hear the difference between the two, because the county, the state, are both involved in that because of 41. 41
yes,
when 41 happened, that interchange there at 41 River Road, everybody's going, what in the heck is coming? Holy cow, this thing it's massive. And it truly is a massive undertaking, because you had to coordinate that through, not you, but this whole project was coordinated through county, state, and then we also have our police department involved for policing the area. So, and our fire department. So a lot of things go into that whole organization of that big project, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And then, you also throw in there the state, who, again, like you just said, partners with, the county on River Road, but the state also did, 41, the roundabouts and all the needed improvements for Costco to get here, for Welland Park to grow and be able to navigate down on that second roundabout. So there's a partnership and good partnerships that must exist to get these projects done successfully. So I always tell people, you have to build good, authentic relationships. You shouldn't have false relationships under any circumstances. They're not healthy. So having those good relationships is allowing the city of Northport to grow. Not even there also, but, think about 75 and Toledo Blade, where FDOT has sort of increased some of their funding to us and accelerated it. Now, accelerated for FDOT means it'll happen in 10 years instead of 40 years, but still having that acceleration allows us to activate activity centers 6 and 10 out there so that we can grow our commercial development, our other footprints, so that these citizens don't have to pay for everything in our city.
Which is, I got to tell you, Toledo Blade is looking phenomenal with the growth that's coming in there and the good paying jobs that come with that.
Yes,
there are a lot of very solid companies moving in that we didn't have. We thought about 25 years ago, everybody's driving away to go to work. Well, they may still be driving away to go to work, but there are a lot more people staying in the area now because of those jobs that are out there.
And you can't fix everything at once. So our goal is to keep trying, keep moving things forward. We have a great staff and team here who take a lot of pride in the work that we do, and we won't stop doing it. And we just sort of you got to have a good attitude, and you have to be able to take things and smile. And we know that it's not personal when people have opinions and ideas that differ from our own. So we accept that as part of the job. You take it, you keep smiling, and you come back every day loving the job that you do, and that's what our team does.
So I'm gonna go into a conversation here a little bit about the community and kind of highlight something backwards here for a second about the budget. Is there a way that the citizens can get involved in the budget side of things?
Yes. So our budget workshops are upcoming. The very next thing that we have is our next community meeting, our final town hall on the voting referendum items on June 24th. And that's at 6 p.m. at Suncoast Technical College. But, our budget workshops are coming up here. They are going to be fruitful. We have a eat and greet, which is over at the Morgan Center on May the 6th at 6 p.m. So we wanted people to come out, eat some food and sort of learn more about the departments and their challenges and their numbers and their performance measures and things that allow them to provide the services that we give them, and for them to sort of get some information so that they can provide some good feedback to our elected officials so that they can be heard. But, we want people to know and understand that, we want to make their interactions meaningful. We don't want to just have meetings just to meet or talk to ourselves. So that's why we have the eat and greet, and we've done it in that format. And then we're going to meet with the commissioners, from now and throughout the rest of the spring and the summer till we get, to the end of August. So we encourage people to get involved, let your voice be heard, and give us your feedback, and let us talk to you. Northport University has begun, and that's our second cohort of that. And, I talked to them a couple of weeks ago, and, their number one pillar of concern was infrastructure. And so I made the argument that, public safety was so important. 61% of the general fund is directed to public safety. And, that's because no matter how much you care about being safe, if you don't feel safe, you're not going to want to be here. And if people don't feel safe, they're not going to want to come here. And then those two things change the trajectory of this city's success drastically, which is why they're so important. Public safety is a huge pillar of importance in the city of Northport.
Yes, it is. So let's a little art center update.
Yeah, so the Art Center update, they had a community meeting. Our Parks and Rec team went to it, and our director went to it. And, I did see it was covered well in the media, and we thank them. And Gail West has been, working, and they're trying to come up with a plan of how to create a new footprint for the Art Center. We know that their current footprint that they're in, which is a city building, can't, withstand the needed repairs to keep it safe. So in a few months, that facility will not be made available, but we're trying to work with them and do our part as a partner to help them with their solution. I've always said that the city of Northport is not the provider of the solution to the Art Center as a nonprofit. We are there to be a partner in their success. So we're still trying to make sure that we play that role. We'll keep meeting with Gail West and her team, and hopefully we'll have a solution that they can sort of announce hopefully sooner rather than later. But it is a challenge, but we know that there's a lot of lovers and supporters of our art community in the city of Northport, and we need it. We keep talking about things that we don't have. What we do have is an art center and some, great parks and recs, and these contribute to the quality of life of those who not only are here, but those that we want to bring here.
So along the lines of quality of life, how about a Warm Willow Springs conservation easement update?
Yeah. So, the conservation easement is still being developed, and we're going to bring it to the city commission on May 27th, which is an evening meeting at 6 p.m. So please be on the lookout for that. As we keep going through the Warm Willow Springs process, it's part of our budget process. We want to make sure that we not only work on the improvements that have gotten underway, based on, identifying contractors to, be able to do the work. We still need to be able to have, the right level of funding for the work. So we need people to still go to Warm Willow Springs and not give up us on this journey. But them still going to Warm Willow Springs means that they need to have a good experience. And, some of the ones who live right around Warm Willow Springs have come to us out of concern that, they aren't counted as residents during this process of Warm Willow Springs. And, we believe that we need to annex those people voluntarily into the city of Northport. And, we get to annex them in, we get to receive their taxes, they get to receive the resident rate on the water park of Warm Willow Springs of going into the water. There's just so many wins there and so many ways to partner to make sure that everyone is sort of taken care of in the process of the enjoyment of the natural asset of Warm Willow Springs.
And that's part of our fantastic park system. We're due for them to come on here in the next few months, I'm sure, and give us a Parks and Rec update and what's going on there. I think I think it's this month that they're going to be talking about the aquatic center. Can you kind of talk about the importance of the the Warm Mill Springs project in accordance with the Parks and Rec as a whole, as a whole department?
So Warm Mill Springs being an enterprise fund, which means that they operate their revenues that they receive along with their expenses that they have, and on an annual basis, they do come out to the positive as they operate, but they have not recouped the purchase price of the actual property. So someone can't say that Warm Mill Spring makes money. You can say it's making money now, but it has not recouped the initial purchase cost of the property. And that's a true statement. But, as it keeps going and as it keeps growing, that number of purchase price and the return on investment, the purchase price gets smaller in the equation and the return on investment starts to get bigger. But that's just the way that it is because it's an enterprise fund. When you start talking about the overall Parks and Recs budget, which we've talked about publicly through our commission in the last few weeks, we need to make sure that we understand Parks and Recs is not a money-making department. They have revenue that they get in from the aquatic center, which reduces the amount of money that we spend out for that. But overall, whether it's the Mullen Center, the Morgan Center, the baseball fields, the other venues that we operate, they all lose money because it is a quality of life outlet for the citizens to be here. You take away those things, and then you don't have the other activities for people to do here that they might have in the bigger cities. And what do you have? You have people who don't want to do anything or can't do anything and want to leave here to do things.
We lived that during COVID when we got the Parks and Rec system shut down. People were calling, begging them to open them back up.
Yeah, exactly.
When you have them taken away, it does open your eyes differently.
Correct.
And
you have an accredited Parks and Recs team, very well accredited, that gets awards. They get awards all the time for how well they run it. Why would you want to not have that and not understand? It is for someone who is not in government, it's hard to understand. Well, they lose money and, I can't believe it. And it's quality of life. If you start charging our soccer organizations to break even at a cost, their costs are going to go through the roof. And that's going to be a problem because then you won't have soccer in this city for our children. And, how well is that going to go over? Not well at all. You have to look at the big picture and understand what we're doing in totality as a government.
And it does bring people. So in totality, as a realtor, we look at all these things as a value when we're selling different cities. Look at the park system. Look at where you're at. Look at you've got 3 kids under the age of 12. Your local neighborhood has this park. I remember as a kid, I grew up in a village, and our local park wasn't like our local parks today, but it was the place to go. Because we had our baseball field, we had our basketball court, we had a little softball area that you could, if the baseball field was being utilized, you could play there. There's a value to what we're talking about. And there's also a value to the kids having somewhere structured to go, keep them off the streets. We talked a little bit about police. We've got a really phenomenal crime rate in our city because of the work we do there. We've got a fire department that does an outstanding job with location of the stations to keep the insurance rates down and service at a A rating. You just talked about the awards and the credentials that they all get. It's just not Parks and Rec. We have massively outstanding services here that we're being looked at from a state, federal, and local level from other cities that come to our city to learn from what we're doing, which I find to be amazing because 25 years ago we were the redheaded stepchild. I don't feel like we're that anymore. We lead in so many categories. It's not funny. What's your thoughts?
Well, when I got here, I told people, quit saying that about being the redheaded stepchild. If you don't want to be that, don't act like that. You go to a room. If you want to be in a room, you sit at the table and act like you belong. You don't stand outside the room saying, hey, why won't you let me in? Just go sit down and, people will take you seriously. And I think we've changed the image of our city over the last 3.5 years. And I think people look at us differently now, and we want to keep that going. And we have so many people who support what we're doing to keep that going. And the people who want to wallow in self-pity and wallow in the past and all the things that haven't gone well and everything, we don't want to hear that. We're moving forward with positive energy and results. And, we're unapologetic about our desire to be the best city, not only in Southwest Florida, but in the state of Florida. So, from our standpoint, I believe that people take us more seriously now. And I like representing our brand. I think our brand is important. I think that as we grow our brand and keeping our integrity and our reputation intact is very important. That's why you're not going to see us do, anything that would jeopardize that. But I think that overall, the city is now enjoying the fruits of a lot of years of hard work and labor to not be the redheaded stepchild. And we will fight every day to make sure that is never a stigma that we own again.
I appreciate that. I do, because I hated the label back then, and I don't like it today, and I don't feel like it today. You're right. There's definitely a different buzz where we're at right now, and I will just send this message to the citizens that everything that we're talking about on the referendum, there's a huge value to you as a citizen to vote for these things. There's a role that you play, and whether you drive away to go to work every day or not, the role that you play in the vote matters. And don't look this one the other way. The importance of your vote to vote for these things is funding at its best offer. And I see you shaking your head, Jerome. Is there anything you want to add into the vote that's coming up? Because we've got 4 minutes left,
Right.
but there's a value for people to get out and get this done.
Just get educated. Make sure you have the facts. Go to the website. Please go to our website at Florida Northport FL.gov. You'll see a banner at the top of the page. Click on the banner. Go to read all the questions, why it matters and what it means. You get the information. You get educated, and you have a better understanding of the value of information that we're giving you. If you have questions about that information, reach out to us. We're not hard to find. We're always here, and we'll give you what you need. But please make sure that you do your part of getting educated so that you can make the best decision on May 13th and come out and vote, or do early voting as well.
Yes, and you've got opportunities here beyond recognition to go out early and get your vote in. You've got multiple resources that you can reach out to. If you have questions about any of these topics that we talked about today, the best thing I could tell you is do a group email to every single commissioner.
Yes.
They're all going to respond to you. Get the information back from each one of them. It may be a different point of view, but it may be something that's more important that they say to you than just a group conversation.
Right.
Be very specific about your concerns. Let them dissect it and trust them. I'm not saying you can't question them, but
Right.
you have to learn to trust. I think you and I talked about this a bit back, and I know we did, because I believe you said we are the cause of them not believing us, because
Right.
we've allowed ourselves to go down this path. Why should they trust right now? Why should they start to learn to change and trust the leadership in the city?
Well, I think, the way I look at it is, first of all, government does something every day somewhere that makes people not trust us, and that's a shame. But, we get in our own way sometimes, and there are bad people everywhere, whether you're in government, whether you're in textiles, whether you're in marketing or entertainment. There's people who do wrong things all over the planet. But what I would say is, look at what myself and my team have done over the last 3+ years. If you don't trust what we've done by now, you're probably never going to trust us. But, we have recovered a lot and done a lot of improvement on what sort of what I inherited when I got here. it was not a good spot for the city hall and the prior, city manager, but look at what we've done and look at what we're doing. So, all I'll say is, I think we've earned your trust as a community by now. And, if you look at the quality of our work, I think it speaks for itself, and we're just going to keep doing more and doing better. So, like you said, it doesn't mean that you can't question us, but it does mean that you should be able to trust our ability to be transparent and accountable over the course of time. So just engage with us. And I promise you, we will not mislead you in any way.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thanks so much for being part of the show. And hopefully next month we can do live and a 2-hour interaction. So work that one out, because it's been a couple months.
Yes, it has. Point taken. Thank you.
Spend time with you and do the bantering back and forth with the citizens. So I will say this: we've got a great staff here that engages with us as a community live on Facebook and YouTube. Interaction is a huge thing for them. Be supportive back to them. Participate. Share this information. Any comments, I will definitely follow back around. I will read all the comments. If there's questions, please post them. Likes and shares. That's what we love. Thanks a lot, and have a great night. Talk to you. Thanks, Jerome.
Appreciate it.